Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today, we're going to be looking at the new unique grand charm known as the Black Cleft. I'm assuming that refers to a cleft chin, a little cleft chin. My dog has a butt chin. Cleft chins are also called butt chins, by the way. I kind of have a little bit of a cleft going on. I digress, though. The Black Cleft Grand Charm is level 75 requirement, and it offers the Monster Magic Immunity is Sundered. Sundered is an effect that basically takes any monster that is immune to magic and brings them down to 95% magic immunity. This means that you can potentially kill them. But the issue with this particular item is that, well, there are no other ways to bring down magic resistance. So, in terms of fire, lightning, ice, or physical damage, there are items in the game that you can potentially use, or spells that you can potentially use to reduce the resistances of a monster, and effectively, bring that 95% down to a lower number. Like, for instance, if you were to use the Wiz and Draw Long Battle Bow on a Sorceress early on, or a Hurricane Druid, or anything like that, it has a negative 35% enemy cold resistance on it, which could potentially bring the 95% down to a very nice level of only, what is that, 70% or something like that? My quick math is terrible. I'm sure I messed that up. Let me just actually do the math real quick. So 95 to 90, because it's got 5%. 90 to 80, 80 to 70, 70 to 60. So what, 60%? Is that right? Please tell me how wrong my quick math is. It is just something funny that I always do wrong. But there's no specific way to reduce monster resistances. In fact, this is actually the first way to break monster immunities that's ever existed. Conviction and lower resist do not work on magic. On top of that, we also do not have any items in the game that can potentially reduce a monster's magic resistance further. So this is literally the first of its kind. Now, it's very interesting to me that they talked about nerfing the Hammerdin, and they did not, by the way. The Hammerdin was not in fact nerfed, although he was in fact nerfed. It's complicated. So basically, everyone in the game got access to one of these new charms, like, for instance, the Crack of the Heavens. Great name, by the way. And every single person having access to one of these means that you have a situation where everyone got a buff, but the hammer did. But the magic damage users. So everyone got something that would increase their kill effectiveness, would make things a little bit easier for them in terms of their build situation, and the Black Cleft doesn't really help the Hammerdin very much at all. It also has a pretty hefty negative in the terms of negative 50% magic resistance. And this is actually callacious. So unlike the fire, lightning, ice, or physical that have negative 75% to their specific element or negative 25% to physical, those can be countered with the use of items. So there are many items in the game that have elemental resistances. There are many items in the game that have, physical damage reduction. Like even the Harlequin Crest Shaco that I'm wearing right now has 10% DR. However, there is, to my knowledge, only one item in the entire game that has a plus magic resistance, and I'm pretty sure that is the safety crafted shield. Let me look it up real quick just to get it like really good here. So the safety crafted shield has a resistance of 5 to 10%, and it varies. So you'd have to roll a couple of them, and maybe you could get a 10% magic resistance version. But you could only counter 10% of the negative 50. Now, magic damage monsters are among some of the most callacious monsters in this game. I have died many times to the Herodrim shooting Dark Stars, especially when they're a multi-shot extra fast. I have died many times to Bone Spear Snakes that are also utilizing magic damage. Bone Spirits in Chaos Sanctuary can be particularly devastating, especially if you end up with a multi-shot version. And while you might not necessarily die to these particular monsters under normal circumstances, they can definitely dish out some pretty serious damage if you're not prepared or if you run into a group of them. And having a negative 50% to magic resistance, which is effectively uncounterable with equipment, is devastating. You would find, honestly, that this will effectively just make this charm absolutely unusable in any zone where there is a magic damage monster. Now, granted, there's not a lot of magic damage monsters in the game. They're kind of spread out, when you do encounter them, they're nasty. But like you're not going to encounter them all over the place. Like when you're in Act 1, Cold Plains, or like like Canyon of the Magi. There's not a lot of magic damage monsters there, so the effect it doesn't really have much of a negative until you do run into one of those magic damage monsters. But I can guarantee you that when you do run into one of those magic damage monsters, if you're wearing this charm, you're going to regret it. Now let's talk about the breaking of the monster immunity for magic. Magic is not something that Hammerdens really have to worry about all that much. In this game, there are very few monsters that are actually magic immune, and the list is so short that I could probably count it on one hand. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. So the Act 2 Bale Wave has magic immune Herodrum, which ironically also means, because they have Dark Stars, by the way, that using this charm versus them is going to be a big risk, because those Act 2 Dark Stars, the Dark Stars that come from them, are going to hurt a lot. And if they happen to spawn with multi-shot extra fast and you're using this charm, it could be deadly. Number 2 is the magic immune zombies that appear in Act 2. They mainly seem to be in Act 2 and nowhere else. And number 3, which I think is the most important one, and the one that actually does make this charm mildly useful in a certain circumstance, is the magic immune monsters that appear inside of Uber Tristram. We have tested it, and the immunities are broken on the magic immune monsters, or rather, just the unbreakable immune monsters in general, in the Uber Tristram zone. Now, this means, of course, that one very good use for this is to enable the Hammerdin to be able to kill some of those monsters that they weren't able to kill before, and they had to use alternate specs for. Unfortunately, 95% resistant, which is what Sundered offers, is still kind of nasty. Let's take a 13k damage Hammerdin, by the way. So let's just pretend we have a 13k damage Hammerdin, which is the one that they offered in PTR in the previous season, by the way, not this season. This is the Phase 2. In Phase 1, they had a 13k damage Hammerdin. So let's pretend you have 13,000 damage with your Hammerdin. You got nice faster cast. You're casting pretty quick, right? And you come across one of these magic immune Uber monsters, the minions, right? Well, you subtract 95% resistance from your 13,000, and you're left with 650. So yes, you can damage them, but it doesn't really do very much, and it's going to take you a little while to kill them. Now, we tested it out, and it actually does work okay. Like, it takes a little while to kill the monsters, but it does work. So for the very bare minimum effect of being able to kill the Uber monsters, which you weren't able to kill before, it's certainly a useful charm. And, I'd like to talk for a minute about, like, the kind of the nerf that's going on here to Hammerdins. So earlier I talked about how we were, everybody got a buff but the Hammerdin. Well, that comes into a poetic justice sort of a thing. The Hammerdin already had it good. They already had it so that 99% of the game wasn't immune to their particular element, and they could essentially kill everything. So, of course, when they added charms that made it so that, everybody could essentially break an immunity and have sort of a similar thing that the Hammerdin already had going on, that when they handed out the Hammerdin's charm, and the Hammerdin's like, I could already do this, bro. Like, there was no, what is this, like 5 monsters? I could use this for like 5 monsters. And it's just kind of poetic because the Hammerdin could already do this. So every class was handed out a buff, but the Hammerdin could already really do this, so it didn't really help them very much. And I will see that, honestly, that Hammerdins probably will keep this in reserve for when they do come across those rare magic immunes. But you know what's probably going to happen with this particular charm? It's going to sit inside the stash. Nobody's going to want to hold it in their inventory because it has negative 50% magic resistance on it. And they're not going to want to take the chance that they're going to die from a magic, resistant monster. But whenever they are in a situation where they have a magic immune monster that they want to kill, they'll probably break it out for that brief period of time, utilize it for, however long they need to kill that monster, and then put it directly back into their stash to remove that negative 50% magic resistance from their character. And that's honestly how I see this particular charm. I'm not sure if I talked about trade value yet, so forgive me if I repeat myself, but trade value, I do believe the Black Cleft Grand Charm is going to be the lowest on the list. I actually ranked them all, and I'm pretty darn sure that the Black Cleft Grand Charm is going to be the, one that nobody wants to find. Like when you find your unique Grand Charm and it falls on the ground, and everybody gets excited and runs over to pick it up, and then somebody identifies it. They're like, which one is it? Which one is it? Did you get a gold one? Did you get a lightning one? And then they're like, I got the magic one. And they're like, oh man, that sucks. Oh man. Oh god, man. All that time and you got the crappiest one. And I'm not really sad about it. I'm not really sad about it at all. I do feel like maybe the negative 50% magic resistance might be a little high for this particular one, especially considering you can't counter it in any way, shape, or form. But all in all, I'm not sad that they introduced an item that isn't necessarily the most overpowered thing in the world, because all the charms do the same thing. They didn't dick over the Hammerden because they all do the same thing. They all sunder the resistances. The problem is that the magic immune characters never needed the resistances to be sundered, so it's just not useful to them. They already have that kind of just ingrained in the game, that the majority of the monsters in the game don't really have any magic resistance at all. And it doesn't do anything for a monster that's not immune. So if you fight a monster that's not magic immune, it does absolutely nothing. That's kind of the interesting things about these charms, is that while yes, they will break immunities, no, they are not helping you versus any monster that is not immune. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we are talking about the Black Cleft Grand Charm. And as always, if you want to keep watching, be sure to hit that subscribe button.